it is 7:30. Shall I begin?
I think so.
All right. So welcome to the Province 1 Cultural Competency Task Force web conference. Our subject today is Ways to Build Police-Community Relations. And so I want to begin with two prayers this evening. The first is for an election from the prayer book. So let us pray. Almighty God, to whom we must give account for all our powers and privileges, guide the people of the United States in the election of a president and representatives and other officials who will, by faithful administration and wise laws, uphold the rights of all, that all may be protected, and our nation may be enabled to fulfill your purposes through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
And then the second is a prayer attributed to St. Francis. Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Where there is hatred, let us sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. Grant that we may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, and it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen. So again, I want to welcome you and introduce our primary presenter, James McKim. And James, do you want to say a little bit about who you are and what you are involved in and what brings you personally to this topic and this ministry?
Sure. Thank you, Karen. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. I wear several hats. Closest to home is that I am the chair for the Diversity Committee for the Diocese of New Hampshire, or the Church of New Hampshire, as we call ourselves. I'm as that representative for the diocese. I sit with Karen and a few others on the Province 1 Multicultural Awareness and Cultural Competency Task Force. Through that, we work to facilitate racial reconciliation through resources, making resources available, and opportunities for learning available throughout the province. And this webcast is one of the efforts of that task force. I'm also the Province 1 representative to the church, the Episcopal Church Executive Council Committee on Anti-Racism. And I, in fact, just returned from a gathering of that body along with the other interim bodies from General Convention that was held a couple of weeks ago in Chaska, Minnesota, where we're looking at from the church-wide level at focus on anti-racism, but there's also a recognition that it needs to go beyond anti-racism and look at culture as well and cultural competency. And I'll share a few things that are happening at the church level through that body as well. But that's just a brief introduction about me and my night job. By day, I'm actually a program manager with Hewlett Packard Enterprise. So many people ask me because of my involvement, are you ordained? And I have to say, no, I'm not ordained. Just very very engaged. So that's me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So do you want to take it away?
Sure, I will take it away. So as I mentioned, I thought I would start with a little bit of what happened, what's been happening actually at the church level based on what the ECCAR, the Executive Committee Council on Anti-Racism, has been doing at the church national level. And we've been working on a number of resolutions that are based on the General Convention resolutions, a number of the General Convention resolutions. And the focus really has been to try to put together a curriculum that can be used throughout the church in terms of anti-racism work. And we've recognized that there's not really a one-size-fits-all curriculum for teaching people how to do this work and engaging people in this work. And that's something we recognize at the province level as well. But there is a directive from General Convention to put together a curriculum that can be used across the church and to provide some way of licensing, for lack of a better word, people who are providing this kind of training on behalf of the Episcopal Church. And there's a recognition that we as the Episcopal Church have a unique position, a unique opportunity because of our position and because of who we are to engage in the work of racial reconciliation. So one of the sub-teams of our executive committee is focusing on not so much developing the curriculum, but identifying what are the components that we want every anti-racism and cultural competency training to address. And knowing that there are programs out there like Seeing the Face of God and others, the idea is that when someone presents one of those programs, they need to also present the Episcopal take, if you will, on anti-racism and racial reconciliation. So we're in the process, one of our sub-teams is in the process of identifying what those components of a curriculum need to be. Interestingly enough, another sub-team is working on a train-the-trainer workshop, very similar to what we've done here in Province 1, looking at teaching facilitators how to actually facilitate training using whatever curriculum they may come up with that would also include those components that are Episcopal Church theologically based that we want to make sure are utilized. A third area that we're looking at is another task force, and I'm actually leading this subgroup. We're looking at putting together materials and platforms, resources, making those resources available on a platform that will be church-wide. And so I'm going to be working, as some of you know, we have such a platform available for Province 1, and I'll be working with the National Church to see if we can incorporate what we've already been doing with Province 1. So that's a bit of what's going on at the church level. One of the topics that we discussed during our 2 days in Chaska was, in fact, this issue of how do we bring our communities together with police and first responders so that we can prevent what's happening around the nation and around the church, what happened in Ferguson and Baltimore. So we are gathering some resources that can be used around the church, and I actually brought to the table some work that has been done at the University of New Hampshire Carsey School around bringing communities together, focusing in on building relationships, improving relationships between the community and police. So I wanted to start off with sharing some of that work with you and sharing with you what we're doing in the church in New Hampshire. And then turning it over to Karen to share what is happening in Massachusetts and Vermont. I think she's going to share a little bit of what's been going on in Vermont. We then also have Kim Murphy here from Springfield, who can share a little bit about what kinds of community and police activities have been going on there. And then we'll open it up for discussion and just people to share what they have been observing in their area, what they might have been doing in their area to work with communities and build relationships between communities and police. So I'm hoping that you all can see my screen. And I'm on the Charter State Schools page for the New Hampshire Blue and You program. And Karen, are you seeing that at least?
I am seeing it.
Excellent, excellent. So this is a great page and a resource that has been put together in conjunction with the NAACP and Primex, as well as the New Hampshire Association of Chiefs of Police. And they've also been doing work with the Living Room Conversations organization. And what they're trying to do is to provide resources for folks to have these community kinds of engagements, from anything from a single conversation to a series of conversations that you might have, a series of events that you might host to promote a sustained dialogue and really, instead of just an introduction between the community and police or first responders, to have a sustained dialogue between people in the community and police or first responders. So the first piece of this is just a flyer that you can use to advertise any of the events that you might host. And this is, as you can see, it's a New Hampshire Blue and You flyer. So we're using this around New Hampshire as we have conversations. We host conversations in various communities around the diocese. And for that, what we have had is rectors from or priests from various parishes are finding a coffee shop, someplace that's not in a church, it's not in a police community center, it's just in a place in the community that anyone might go and anyone might feel comfortable going to. And we call it kind of a neutral ground, because if you go to a church, then it's a religious kind of an event. If you go to a police station or a police community hall, then it's a police station kind of event, and people can tend to not want to go to those kinds of locales. So what we've been doing is finding coffee shops or just general gathering places in the community where we will have a police representative, one or more, and we encourage more than just the token one police representative to attend. And with that, you get to choose what kind of conversation you want to have. And so going back to the site, there are some guidelines and discussion guides for hosting those kinds of conversations. If you want to host a dialogue, there's a discussion guide for how you might host a dialogue. If you want to just do a short living room conversation, it's phrased living room, so it could be held in someone's living room or it could be in a coffee shop. And I'll show you what that one looks like. So the idea is there may be some background reading. You might say that for this gathering, we're going to be discussing these topics that are covered in this book. So people might want to read this book or read this article before you come. Again, that's optional, but there are a few questions that are prepared that you can have yourself or a rector or a priest or someone to facilitate in discussion. So the first question, why are we here? Second question, what are our core values? And we'll get people to share what those are. Third question, what are your biggest concerns about police and community relations? And 4 is reflection, thinking about what's been said during the conversation, what strikes you from that, and then a brief discussion maybe about what could we do going forward. Do we want to have another event? Are there certain topics that we might want to discuss during that those future events? And then a quick closing. So this is just a sample of a set of guidelines for a gathering that you might have. We've been doing it. We have in Derry, Ray Bonin, who is our rector for the Church of the Transfiguration, which is actually a multi-faith community. Along with, they share a campus with a synagogue, with our Jewish brethren. He's been holding them for a number of months. And they meet every month. And they've gotten to the point now where it's just an open conversation about what are the pressing issues or pressing topics for that month or in the community at large. They started off, though, with a conversation similar to this, just kind of a kickoff, having people share their thoughts and their values and what they wanted to talk about. So there's also this guideline set for sustained dialogue, and so if you decide you want to meet on a regular basis, there's some guidelines here about just what kinds of conversations you might think about having, and trying to come up with perhaps a goal that the community and the first responders and the police might want to achieve in terms of relationship building. So there's a lot here. We have in New Hampshire actually an effort to host at least one community conversation in all 46 of our parishes around the diocese for this year. That's our goal as a diocese. Will we make it? I suspect we won't, but so it's an aspirational goal. But we already have several communities doing it, and we're publicizing it through our newsletters that we want to invite people to do it. I'm going to be going around to our convocations. We have 4 convocations throughout the diocese, and I'm going to be sharing this and asking that they have hopefully at least one of these kind of community events in their convocation. So hopefully we'll at least get 4 more, other than the ones that are already going on a monthly basis in Derry and in Concord. I think with that I will stop and see. I'll kind of turn it over to this. I suppose I've not been looking at the comments, if anybody's been typing in any questions or anything. I guess we could take a break now and ask for any questions. If folks want to type them in, I can answer them. If not, we can move on to Karen.
Well, I see one question about nothing from Maine. And so I would say in answer to that, I'm sure there are things going on in Maine. We just, for this web conference, didn't have an offering. So Matt, if you have something, or some of the others of you, please offer those. I will start with 3 examples that I have been given by people who responded to this web conference. The first is from Attleboro, which is kind of south, the southern end of the Diocese of Eastern Massachusetts, and this is from Mary Alice Sullivan, and she talks about a program that they're doing, which is an outshoot or offshoot of their interfaith group. And so they have been meeting for about 10 years, and they have decided that that they want to learn and listen. That is their goal, to meet together and learn and listen. It's a place for them to tell and hear stories of God. And over this time, they've learned to trust and respect each other. And so it looks like this is kind of an organic group that out of this main group that's called GAIN, the Greater Attleboro Interfaith Network, many offshoots have come that are in response to what they are finding as challenges in their community. And so they have been meeting with the mayor of Attleboro and the police chief for just over 2 years. And they've had community meetings with the mayor and police and citizens. And they are held in such a way that people get to speak. And sometimes they say that they have to covenant to stay a little bit longer because the meetings are very full. And there are difficult moments, she says. And now they are incorporating the police into their annual Interfaith Thanksgiving service. And the donations that are received for that service will be given to the police department to hire a professional trainer in race relations. And so she notes that, like so many other communities, Attleboro, the reason why this offering is particularly important is because Attleboro, like so many communities, don't have the funds for this kind of thing, for having trainers for the police. And so she is thinking that this is going to be very important. They are also forming a clergy chaplain team to assist and support the police. And they are saying, she's saying that this is just at the very beginning stages because they're still, the reality is, as in many communities, they're still trying to build relationships and build trust. And they meet, she says, once a month with the mayor and the police chief, usually a week or so after the meeting of GAIN, the interfaith group. So that's one example. The other, and I see that Sarah Van Gulden is on, and you might have something to add, Sarah, is happening in the Lynn area, and it seems that they have been doing a fair amount in terms of Lynn, Mass, in terms of building police and community relationships, and they're affiliate of the Essex County Community Organization, have been working for social and racial and economic justice. They've been involved in Jobs Not Jail and Black Lives Matter, and also immigration. And they joined a group called Neighbor to Neighbor, and they have been hosting the candidates for sheriff, for county sheriff candidates forums so that they can get to know these individuals. I'm sure that it's helpful in, one, getting to know them, two, hearing the issues, but also for the candidates for sheriff to hear the issues of the community. And she says that last summer, they offered a 4-hour implicit bias training at the Lynn Police Headquarters for all of the Lynn Police Department command sheriff and the ECHO leaders. And so she had asked what would be the content. So I think she's got a good idea about that. But what she offers is one example, one of several examples of what people are doing in their locale. The other thing that I would say is that I know that in the city of Boston, Roxbury and Dorchester area, the police department has been intentional about meeting with community groups, getting out to where young people congregate and doing simple things like having ice cream or other treats and having conversations with the children and youth. And so those are examples of how people are responding to this seeming alien, it's not seeming, to the alienation that many are feeling between community life and the police forces. So I'm going to stop there.
Karen,
yes.
if I can just highlight a couple of things that you mentioned.
Yep.
First of all, I wanted to lift up the conversation with police commissioners as a way to start this this kind of effort. Support from the top of the police force, I think, has been critical in the success of the efforts that we've undertaken, and I think I heard that mentioned in a couple of those that you mentioned as well. And one of the things that we've had to do in a couple of our communities is to convince the commissioners that it's not, we don't, well, I shouldn't say it. Let me say it positively. We would like more than just one representative because we want to build a relationship with the entire police force, not just one person in the police force. So having as many police there as possible and having the leadership in the police force allow people the time to attend those gatherings is important. The other thing I wanted to highlight is the interfaith aspect of this, because we're trying to, as our presiding bishop says, reach beyond. We go out, not just look inwardly. So the more other faiths we can bring in to the conversation and have them bring their contacts into the community effort, that's really the community. The community is not just the Episcopal Church in your parish. The community is everyone who lives in that geographic area. So just wanted to highlight and lift up those two, I think, very important components of successful relationship building.
Thank you. And I'm looking at Sarah Van Gulden, who is with the folks in Lynn at St. Stephen's and Lynn Church, and she wants to add that it's important to have a specific goal when you're meeting with the police community because they often feel under attack, and so if they know that we're meeting for a specific purpose rather than some kind of free-ranging or unpredictable conversation, it seems to be that it will make the meeting more successful. And I'll just say one more thing. We have gotten an entry from Elizabeth Parker in Vermont, and she is saying that there have been a number of events on public television about the militarization of police,
yeah.
And it was followed by a panel comprised of the ACLU, the state, I think this is state ED, I'm not quite sure what that means, but, state education department, the police chief, as you stated, James, that it is important to have the buy-in for those from the leadership to set the tone for the gathering. And also in those conversations, that the community has an opportunity to see what kinds of resources that the police do or don't have to actually respond to what they are encountering in the community. I see that Becky is talking about the Cape Cod community. The Lower Cape has been meeting with the Cape chiefs for the past 2 years, and that they will be meeting again for conversation in the next month. The conversations were held with police persons in Barnstable, Yarmouth, and Dennis, and articles in the local newspaper, and also part of some of the Martin Luther King action committees that are part of these conversations. And she is echoing what you said and what we heard from Attleboro, that it gives a lot of power and excitement when it is an interfaith group that's doing the work. So I'll take a breath there and let you share again, and I see other people are typing in, and we'll circle back to those.
Right, so another point that I wanted to just lift up from something I think you said, Karen, and we talked about this in Chaska at the Interim Bodies Convention, is that many times police departments don't have the resources or know how to deal with the community on this topic. So we have resources around that we can offer to come into a police department and provide some training, provide some guidance as to what these issues are and how they might be addressed. So that's a great value to them, and a way to get to gain their trust by offering to do something they don't have the resources or the ability to do themselves. With that, I think we have Kim on the line. Kim, are you still with us?
I am still with you.
Excellent. Would you grace us with your experiences and your thoughts about the topic?
Sure. I do want to reintroduce myself because I'm actually not out in Springfield, and excuse me, I'm actually working with the Hub Initiative down in the Cape area, Plymouth Cape and Island Mission Hub. I'm the executive director of that. But to get back to the topic at hand, I am a trained police chaplain. I was trained through the police academy in Maine back in the early 2000s. It was the first class, and I'm the first woman law enforcement chaplain to be so trained. I've worked as a police chaplain for a number of years until I moved back to Massachusetts and held the rank of lieutenant in the Winthrop, Maine Police Department. So I can speak to my experiences from a different perspective of what it means to be working with the law enforcement officers, and even though it was a small town, it was, I think the experiences are somewhat universal. I did hear some really interesting things, especially from Attleboro in regard to particularly about relationship building with the police officers. And I think that's, for any successful program, would be critical, not just with the police chief or commissioner, but the rank and file, the patrol officers in particular, who are the ones that have the most interaction with the people in the communities. And it is difficult to gain the trust of the police officers because, especially now, they do feel very much attacked. And my friends, people that I'm still friendly with in the police department, are particularly resistant to Black Lives Matter because they think that is a wholesale condemnation of law enforcement officers and law enforcement in particular. Whether or not that is true, I mean, that is their perception pretty much across the board, and as we all know, perception is reality to people. So relationship building is paramount, and some of the ways that I would suggest in relationship building is having people from your parishes, even particularly the rectors, go on a ride-along with an officer if you can. It is extraordinarily eye-opening to see that perspective when you're sitting in a cruiser and you're driving around your community, to see what the police officers see, to talk to them, to build those one-on-one relationships as best as you are able, to listen, to offer support for such a difficult job. The officers that I know and love, they consider themselves to be part of the helping community, and they don't see what they're doing as anything other than being helpers. There's something that has happened along the way, and I think someone had mentioned the militarization of policing, and that's a direct response to community and political demands. So we go from officer-friendly to officer RoboCop in a matter of a generation, and that comes from police academy tactics, and also police officers and police departments are strapped for cash, and if you have excess military materials that are going to be mothballed, well, why not give them to the police departments? So it's almost a fait accompli that you're going to start having militarized police departments to match the equipment that they have been receiving. There's also the opportunity to, again, not only go to ride-alongs, but to attend as many meetings as you can with police officers, show them that you have their back, so to speak, and that everything that you're trying to do as far as communication will improve their ability to be police officers, that you empathize and sympathize with them, but at the same time hold them accountable to what they are and are not doing. Well, I've talked a little bit, so I don't know if anyone has any questions that they have of me that I can help flesh out in greater detail.
Well, I see one reaction to your words that offers a different perspective, that says that their experience as people who are there to protect business and enforce laws, and of course they're part of the problem because we all play a role in the environment. So this is not what this. So I'm editorializing. So the comments were that the experience is that their main job is to protect businesses and enforce laws, and that they're part of the problem. And so my editorial is that I think it's a shared problem that we're facing in this country.
I would add to that. I think we need to recognize that their intentions, police intentions overall, are good. They are trying to protect us, and they're trying to protect us through the laws that have been passed. And are the laws perfect? No. Are there practices that are around enforcing the laws that are perfect? No. But I think, as Kim said, we have an opportunity to build a relationship with them, build the trust with them, and to help them to see how to enforce those laws in a humane and appropriate manner. I don't think you'll find any policeman who does not want to help. They may not know how, and we have examples being thrown at us all the time in the news about where policing has gone wrong. And I would say that that's not the majority of the police encounters that are happening. The majority are probably going very well, but the wrong ones get the publicity. So it kind of feels like there's a majority of bad interaction. And we need to counter that. I think we are in a position to work with and lead communities and relationships to build that better set of relationships with our police and help them to really enforce the laws in a proper fashion, acceptable fashion.
And it's also about how do we help police officers de-escalate situations, to help them take steps back, and to calm a situation down instead of adding gasoline to a particular fire. So that, I think that's part of the issue where things just spiral out of control, and we see the horrific results when use of force happens, and also opportunity to have people actually meet the people in their communities. One telling anecdote was when I was working in Maine, and I was talking to members of the police department, longtime members who had been serving that community, 10, 15 years, and I was talking about people that have lived all their life in that particular town, and they had no idea who I was talking about because they did not deal with them, because these are the people that did not get into trouble, quote-unquote trouble. So most of the police officers deal with 20% of the population almost all the time. And unfortunately, what happens is that you become callous. You stop thinking of these people as people, and you just see them as quote-unquote frequent flyers, or an unfortunate name that I tried to stamp out in my department was dirtbags. You start putting these people at you start dehumanizing them, because the constant wear on a person's psyche, emotional and spiritual psyche, of dealing with the same people and the same problems over and over again, it wears on you, so your soul just develops a callus, and you become callous. And our job, I see, as a chaplain, as people of the community, is to remind them of the innate humanity in all of people, that even the quote-unquote frequent flyers are children of God and should be treated with that kind of respect. And it's getting officers out of the cruisers and back onto the streets, where you walk a beat, you get to meet people, you get to see the rhythm of life, you get to know the people, the frequent flyers, but you also get to know the people who are community leaders, the ones that will have your back, the ones that will help you, the ones that will step in and negotiate for you or translate for you or interact with you on behalf of members of the community. So those are the things that I can see that be extremely helpful for these programs that I'm hoping that our churches are able to develop.
I think that's such a great point about us taking a little more, I won't say control, but participating a bit more in policing. We pay police through our taxes to do a job, and partially it's because we either don't want to do that job of policing, or we don't feel that we're capable of doing that job of policing. But I would maintain that, and this is where community policing groups come in, we can assist police in doing that job, and we should be assisting police in doing the job that we're paying them to do. We shouldn't just throw our hands up and say, police, you take care of it. We need to be a team. That's how we're going to be successful, and police can't be everywhere at all times. So it's incumbent upon us to know where the police can be and know what their limitations are and where we need to step up and help.
So I want to just mention, I have a question for you, Kim, but I want to mention Catherine Cook's comment that she says that there's a bias-free policing policy for the state police, and that she says that the Vermont Ecumenical Council got involved a few years ago when they were looking at the issues of driver's license for undocumented farm workers, and because that ICE is often arresting these workers. And so this initial initiative is now being worked on at the community level. But the question I have for you, Kim, is when you were active there as a chaplain, so what was your day like, or your encounter? What kinds of things did you do with the police in your role as chaplain?
Well, I was serving a church full-time, so I was a part-time chaplain, but when I could, I would go out on ride-alongs with all of the officers in the department. I would attend department meetings as well as training. So I have been trained in community policing. We had training with how to de-escalate situations. We had training about trauma. We had training in regard to how you deal with people with mental illness and how you work with people who have drug addiction issues. So even though it was a little town in Maine, there were quite a number of forward-looking seminars and workshops that officers had to take, which I thought to be extremely relevant today, because some of these issues that we dealt with 10, 15 years ago are the same issues that keep coming up. And for whatever reason, either those trainings had, I don't know, if everything is cyclical, the cyclical nature of these meetings or these workshops that are on the downswing, and hopefully they'll come in the upswing. So I did all of those things. I attended other clergy meetings with other chaplains across the state to talk about certain issues that seem to be affecting our officers. Basically, it's just touching base with some of the officers, talking to them about how things are going on in their family. If there was a behavioral issue, say if an officer was drinking too much, while I did not betray confidences, I did make it very clear, like we do as clergy, that if you are engaging in behavior that is unbecoming to an officer, I will report you to the chief. So they knew that if I started talking to them seriously about their behavior, then we needed to ratchet it up and go up the line of command. Some of the issues that police officers face because of the stress of their job, a lot of officers had drinking problems. Some officers had sexual addiction. Some officers had food addiction, trying to deal with their stress, because you have an officer who's on duty for 10 to 12 hours, and they're hypervigilant. And when I mean hypervigilant, I mean I would go on ride-alongs, and the next thing you know, if I'm just driving in my car, suddenly I'm on patrol. I'm looking at people's license plates to see if their cars are registered. Like, what am I doing that for? I have no power and authority, but you just gain these habits. So you have police officers who are hyper-vigilant, always concerned about someone or something happening that is out of their control. And control is huge for police officers. They need to be in control of a situation all the time. Control equals safe. And I think that's, again, a touch point for a lot of our communities. If a police officer is struggling to maintain control, if a person is not secure in their skills or has no relationship with the people that they're policing, again, we've seen the horrific outcome of people who are trying to create control no matter the cost. So you have a lot of hypervigilant police officers who go home to their family. A lot of family issues rise up because why can't dad or mom come home and turn it off? And a lot of officers just can't do that, or they don't have healthy coping mechanisms. That, again, that might not be the community's issue, but it's something that maybe we can provide for departments that are over-budgeted and stressed.
I think that that's such a great point about policemen are people, and because of the work they do, they are just super stressed. And it makes me think of also, I think people aren't taught how to behave when they are confronted, I don't use the word confronted with, when they encounter a policeman. I think there's kind of two sides to this interaction that can take place. One is we're looking to train police on how to interact with people in the community, people of various cultures, various backgrounds. But we also need to teach people in the community how to behave when they encounter police. I just harken back to when I was growing up, and I grew up in the South. My father would not let me out of the house unless I was clean-shaven, wearing nice clothes, because if you look suspicious, you're going to be treated suspicious. Just as Kim said, perception is reality. So where are the places that we're teaching people in the community how to behave when they encounter police? I remember on Facebook there was a great Chris Rock video about how to act when you encounter police. Relationships are two-way streets, and I think we need to recognize that we need to look at behavior on both sides of the relationship, not just on one side of the relationship, to reduce the stress for the police, so they're more comfortable when they encounter someone in the community.
And just to add to that, when I was in Maine, it wasn't so much cultural or racial issues that came up, mostly economic, because the majority of people in Maine are white, and in the community that I served was also predominantly white. And I think what you were saying was, I think that's also cultural stereotypes as well. We have to, it's getting back to that, if you look the part, act the part. I'm saying this wrong, but I think that harkens back to the cultural biases that we're trying to address too. That how do you behave when you deal with police? Well, different cultures. If you have a language barrier, if you have mental illness, if you have there are some people, and I've read a study on this, and I wish I could point to what the study is, but I did bring this up to my department, that there are some people, no matter if they are innocent or guilty, if they encounter police, if they're stressed, they will run. It doesn't mean that they're guilty. It doesn't mean that they're innocent. It's just part of their fight or flight syndrome. Flight work is the predominant response all the time. And police will, if someone runs from them, they automatically will assume that there's guilt. Now, that doesn't mean that there is guilt. There's just a lot of cultural concerns. If you're an immigrant and you come from a war-torn country, if you come from like Syria or someplace in Africa where there's just been political upheaval, if you see a police officer, you're automatically going to assume the worst and you run. Again, that's going to create some kind of a bias in the police that you're somehow guilty. And again, we have seen that played out to horrific and deadly end.
I want to just jump in here because I'm looking at some of the comments, and there are some comments that talk about the abolishment of the professional police and turning that into a community policing system, and also that took issue with the conversation about how, James, you were talking about how whether or not what we have been suggesting is victim blaming, rather than expecting the police to have a more I would say neutral attitude. There is also a comment about that kind of parallels, Kim, what you were talking about, where not only police are hyper-vigilant, but also people become hyper-vigilant because of experiences that they have had or experiences that people that they know have had. And I think so that issue of trust is one that's real on both sides, that there are community members who feel that just by virtue of being that they are targets. And I think that, of course, we've talked about how police are also feeling targeted as well.
Well, if anyone has taken any of my comments to be victim blaming, I apologize. I must have not expressed myself. I'm not blaming the victims at all. It's just this is the perspective of the police. It's not something that is either right or wrong. It just, again, that's their perception for the most part. And I'm continuing to be in contact with police officers. So, I sometimes have to shut down my Facebook page because it's just so inflamed with people feeling rather, police officers feeling rather badly that the world is targeting them. And when people get to a place, as we've noticed, of anger and fear, you stop talking, you stop communicating, you can't listen because you're so wedded to the fact that, everybody is ganging up on the police when that's not true at all. And it's just calming, again, de-escalating the situation so you can have conversations about what their role is in the community and that, yes, they are that thin blue line, but rallying around bad actors, rallying around police who misbehave is not helping them to continue to reach out and be that community policing that they need to be. The solidarity and the brotherhood is very real, and that can be really disturbing when you see it firsthand, especially when someone has been misbehaving. And it's difficult for people who are officers who have rank, and especially police chiefs, to try to walk that line of being one with their officers and yet upholding the standards that all officers need to have. And I'm not saying that departments are like that in particular, but it's tricky to negotiate that really strong bond that police officers have and call out people who are not behaving the way that they're supposed to be, that they're behaving in ways that are counter to the oath that they took. So again, I apologize if victim blaming seems to have come out through anything that I've said. I do not mean that at all.
So let me just say that you were not the target of that. I think that the comment suggests that the idea that it's calling out the extent to which we might blame the victim. So nothing that you said in particular, but that
That's what I said.
Yeah, that to have to dress differently in order to be safe, is a problem. But what I am observing in this conversation is not so much right or wrong, but the realities. I mean, the things that you, Kim, and you, James, have described, and some of the comments that our viewers are discussing is that it is a complicated reality. And so that's what makes, I think, these conversations really important, because I just don't see how, what options we have or, how we move past without building relationships. And I think as Christians, as people of faith, not necessarily just Christians, we talked about the interfaith aspect of this. Relationship building is key to what we are called to do. So I am aware that it's 8:28, which means that we have about 2 minutes. So James and Kim, I don't know if you have some final points you'd like to make. I am watching this conversation that's going on in our chat box, and so I would commend it to everybody's attention because it gives us a window into the complexities of this work about building community between community and the police.
I wish I could see that. I'm flying blind here, unfortunately. But if anyone wants to discuss this further with me, I'd be happy to email or call, or you can call me. My email is kmurphy@diomass.org. so we can continue the conversation. And if you have any questions about chaplaincy in particular, I'll answer as best I can. But you're right, Karen. Thank you for saying that. It is a very complicated situation. The reality, both sides are right and both sides are wrong. And the only way that we can begin to bridge these differences is to really build the relationships, and to echo what you said, that's really the hallmark of Christianity. Is we can have the greatest theology, but if we have no relational foundation to support it, it goes nowhere. So getting to know people, getting to know what makes them tick, getting to know what they think deep in their heart, and what the dreams of their soul is what is important. And hopefully that this is the beginning and we don't get discouraged, but continue to go forth as servants of God.
So, Tim, I think that you will be able to find the transcripts, is that right, Julie, of the chat conversations when this is posted on the website? Julie is typing. And what about you, James?
I would just end with thanking everyone for the conversation. It's complex, as Karen said, and we as people of faith, and most of us, I think, here are Episcopalian. We're being called by our presiding bishop to be the Jesus movement. And if we ask ourselves, what would Jesus do in this kind of situation? I think what I think he would say is, through all of the living that he did and the examples that he set, that we should be bringing people together, period. And working through our differences in good faith. And that's really what we're talking about, is how do you create the environment through these guidelines, through these examples of community conversations that help to build those relationships in good faith. So I'm pleased that we've been able to have this conversation. It will continue. Kim gave her email address. On the Province One website, we have a discussion forum area, so if you have questions or thoughts after this, you can feel free to post them on that discussion forum, and a number of us are out there looking at the conversations and are happy to respond and carry the conversation forth. Feel free to reach out to us if you want to have a future conversation, or if you want perhaps assistance from us in pulling together a community conversation. We're certainly here as a resource to you at the provincial level to do that as well. So that's my ending spiel, and Karen, back to you.
So as I end, I just want to reiterate, Julie is saying that the chat will be published on the Province One website. And so I'm going to draw our conversation to a close. And I feel that the conversation is so ripe and passionate that we may be called to have, part two or another opportunity to talk together about this. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.